Chapter 5. The Connoisseurs, enjoying every last drop. The connoisseurs are the last and most successful investment tribe I discovered among the top investors who worked for me. These are the investors whose performance lived up to the billing or exceeded it. They did not get paralyzed by unexpected losses or carried away with victories. They treated every investment like a vintage of wine. If it was off, they got rid of it immediately, but if it was good, they knew that it would only get better with age. They usually drank the odd bottle now and then, to tide them over, but otherwise they sat back and waited. It takes a lot of nerve to do nothing or merely trim a position when winning. Everything points to us being hardwired to sell out of an investment when we have made a reasonable profit. As a professional investor, I can tell you that clients are no different. Having entrusted you with their hard-earned money, they can get seriously annoyed when you persist in holding onto a stock that has made a nice profit. It gets even more awkward if that profit retraces its steps at some point. Faced with the marshmallow test of the previous chapter, the connoisseurs had a simple way round it. These investors knew that they could not resist the temptation to eat what was put in front of them. Their strategy was, therefore, to take a small bite and leave some for later, extending and maximizing the pleasure of success as long as possible. Taking small profits along the journey like a connoisseur allows us to get instant gratification without ruining our long-term wealth aspirations. This trick is one that I have seen in action and which allowed my best investors to stay in absolutely phenomenal winners. How to ride winners. Many of the connoisseurs I worked with came across as cerebral, and if you met some, you might easily think they became rich by being prodigious thinkers with IQs off the charts. Don't be fooled. In terms of hit rate, as a group they actually had a worse record than the average for my investors. 6 out of 10 ideas the connoisseurs invested in lost money. The trick was that when they won big. They rode their winners far beyond most people's comfort zone. Here's how to be like a connoisseur, followed by real-life examples of their approach in action. 1. Find unsurprising companies. The connoisseur's approach was to identify companies with a view to holding them for 10 or more years. They would buy businesses that they viewed as low negative surprise companies. In other words, it was hard to envisage anything that could cause these companies to fail in generating profits over the years ahead. Even if in the future they had terrible management at the helm, that management would have to be extraordinarily incompetent to destroy the profit-making ability of the enterprise. The companies were effectively money-printing machines. The future growth of earnings was seen as very predictable, and because the connoisseurs believed earnings growth drove stock prices, the stock price should therefore drift higher over time. The main risk of buying these stocks was if they were rated highly at the outset, i.e. with high price/earnings ratio. This could mean that the company fundamentally performs as expected but the share price doesn't follow earnings upwards due to it getting derated. A stock that the market was willing to pay 25 times earnings for today might only trade on 15 times its earnings in the future. Value is in the eye of the beholder, and at various points the market highly or lowly values a company. 2. Look for big upside potential. Given the average success of an investment idea is 49%, and that's the average for some of the very best investors in the world, it really does matter that when you win big. Therefore, any investment idea should have very good upside potential. Where many investors go wrong is in investing in too many ideas with limited upside potential of, say, 10 to 30%. This can sometimes be the result of artificial constraints, setting targets far too low, like a raider. The secret of the connoisseurs was not only to do away with such unambitious limits, they never used price targets, but also to eschew investments that might only ever perform so modestly. They just weren't interested in small-scale success. 3. Invest big and focused. When the connoisseurs were very confident in an idea, they built up big positions. They could end up with 50% of their total assets invested in just 2 stocks. It was these stocks that made them so successful. Having massive belief in a couple of names meant they were prepared to ride the stocks with big positions even when they were up 200% or more. Their success was testament to Stanley Druckenmiller's comment that position size can be more important than entry price. This is one of the reasons that I allow each of my current investors to invest up to 25% of the money I give them in a single idea. When you have tremendous conviction on a trade, you have to go for the jugular. It takes courage to be a pig. It takes courage to ride a profit with huge leverage. As far as Soros is concerned, when you're right on something, you can't own enough. It is no use having a small investment in a big winner, you have to have a large position size to generate big returns. 4. Don't be scared. One of the keys to riding a big winner is to avoid being scared out of it. The way many connoisseurs avoided being scared out of a position or being attracted away by another great investment was to take small profits as the stock kept going up rather than selling entirely out of the position having made 20% or 50%. In other words, lest all the bottles in their cellar got corked, they would take 1 or 2 upstairs on special occasions and enjoy them. 5. Make sure you have a pillow. One of the key requirements of staying invested in a big winner is to have or cultivate a high boredom threshold. Meeting some of my connoisseurs could be very, very boring because nothing ever changed. They would talk about the same stocks they had been invested in for the past 5 years or longer. On the days I had a meeting scheduled with a connoisseur, I sometimes struggled to get out of bed. The fact is, most of us will find it difficult to emulate the connoisseurs because we feel the need to do something when we get to the office or home trading desk every day. We look at stock price charts, listen to the latest market news on Bloomberg TV, and fool ourselves into believing we could add value from making a few small trades here and there. It is very hard to do nothing but focus on the same handful of companies every year, only researching new ideas on the side. Many of us, seeing we have made a profit of 40% in one of our stocks, start actively looking for another company to invest the money into, instead of leaving it invested. This is precisely why lots of investors never become very successful. Now let's look at some of the connoisseurs' real-life investments to see these principles in action. Case study: ShopRite Holdings. ShopRite Holdings is the largest food retailer in Africa, and the chances are, whatever country you visit in Africa, you will come across ShopRite supermarkets. They are even found on the islands of Madagascar and Mauritius. If you are a wealthy African, then in all likelihood you will shop at Checkers, which is ShopRite's high-end hypermarket. If you are at the lower end of the income scale, you will probably be a customer of ShopRite USave. To give you a feel for just how dominant this company is in Africa, in South Africa they reckon that 2 out of every 3 consumers shop at one of ShopRite's supermarkets. Furthermore, this holdings company also owns and operates furniture outlets under the OK brand, fast food outlets under the Hungry Lion brand, and pharmacies under the Medrite brand. It is rather like the Walmart of Africa, its shops are everywhere. One of the connoisseurs decided to invest in ShopRite Holdings on 20 May 2009 when the shares were trading at the sterling equivalent of £3.96 per share. He closed his position 3 years later on August 9, 2012 with the shares trading at the sterling equivalent of £13.10 per share. On a buy, hold and do nothing basis, this represented a return of 231% in just 3 years. As we know, most people have a tendency to sell after making a profit of around 20% or 30%, so most would have given up over 200% by selling too early. My investor's secret was to take small profits along the way to ensure he stayed invested, a process he would describe as trimming his winners. Like going for a haircut, the idea was to take a little off, not the whole lot. This process meant he didn't quite make the full 231% return, but it did mean that he stayed invested. In the end, he achieved an average selling price of £9.31 per share. This meant he made a profit of 104%, still up to 5 times what most other investors in that stock would have experienced, given my findings. Case study: Spirax-Sarco Engineering. Spirax-Sarco is a UK company that helps to build and maintain steam and industrial fluid plants. While few of us will have ever heard of it, it is far from a consumer brand. It is the world leader in the manufacturing of boiler and pipeline control valves and steam traps for steam heating. It is known for its high standards. Guinness chose Spirax-Sarco's clean steam generator to help ensure it met strict quality and flavor guidelines in the production of its beer. The clean steam generator basically sterilizes kegs. You might also see Spirax-Sarco's equipment in hospitals, where its cleaning systems have been beneficiaries of energy efficiency drives. 4. Example: Spirax-Sarco's Easy Heat system was recently installed at Stafford General Hospital in the UK because it is more efficient at heating water than the old calorifiers, a water storage vessel that heats water and should save them more than £3,000 a year in energy bills. The company stands to benefit significantly from the trend towards doing things in a greener and more cost-efficient manner. In the food industry, where the trend is towards ready-to-eat products, Spirax-Sarco's steam controls are being used more and more. 4. Example: Moy Park recently installed a new oven in which to cook its ready-to-eat roast chickens. Spirax-Sarco installed a steam control unit. That meant, within the oven, steam would humidify and keep the chickens moist. As you can see, Spirax-Sarco products are everywhere. Spirax-Sarco was a company that one of the connoisseurs had known for nearly 2 decades. He decided to initiate a position in the stock on 30 November 2007, when the shares traded at £9.63 per share. He sold 5 years later on October 22, 2012, with the shares trading at £19.70 per share. On a buy, hold and do nothing basis, this represented a return of 105%. This connoisseur, by staying invested in the stock, but trimming his position and realizing small profits along the way, made a handsome return of 70%. By gradually trimming, he achieved an average selling price of £16.40 per share. Not bad when you consider most people would probably have sold outright when the shares got to around £11.50. Case study: Rotork. Unless you are in the oil, gas, or water industries, Rotork is another company you will never have heard of. It is a UK-based business and the world's leading manufacturer of valve actuators, whether they be electric, pneumatic, or hydraulic. It basically provides engineers with dependable solutions to manage the flow of liquids, gases, and powders. Like Spirax, Rotork was a company that a connoisseur had known for a long time. He initiated a position in the stock on November 30, 2007. When the shares traded at £9.84 per share. 53 He sold 5 years later on 4 December 2012, with the shares trading at £25.18 per share. On a buy, hold and do nothing basis, this represented a staggering return of 156%. My investor's action of taking small profits along the journey meant he achieved an average selling price of £17.26 per share, and that, when he sold out completely, he made an excellent profit of 74%. Case study: President Chain Stores. President Chain Stores, PCS, is a Taiwanese company. Many of us will be familiar with its products, just not its name. The company is an international food conglomerate operating in Taiwan and China. Rather, like Walmart, it sells everything from own-brand milk and yogurts to noodles, bread, and more or less anything else you can think of. While you may not be familiar with PCS, you will be familiar with the other stores they operate under license in Taiwan, such as 7-Eleven, Starbucks, Mr. Donut, and Carrefour. PCS also owns the Uni-President Lions, a professional baseball team in Taiwan's Chinese Baseball League. One of the connoisseurs initiated a position in President Chain Stores on June 15, 2006, which was the day I gave him money to invest. At that point, the shares were trading at the equivalent of £1.37 per share. He sold 5 years later on August 23, 2011, with the shares trading at £3.73 per share. On a buy, hold and do nothing basis, this represented a return of 173%, but given this investor liked to trim his winners, the average sell price he achieved was £3.17 per share, which meant that when he eventually sold out completely, he had made a profit of 132%. Case study: Capricorn Bank. Capricorn Bank is a commercial bank based in Thailand. If you have ever been to Thailand, the chances are you will have used one of its ATMs to withdraw money. Through its wholly owned subsidiaries, it does everything from investment banking to securities brokerage, fund management, hire purchase, and machinery/equipment leasing. If you read one of its strategy documents, you will see that its goal is to be Thailand's main consumer bank. A connoisseur initiated a position in Capricorn Bank on June 20, 2008, when the shares traded at the equivalent of £1.09 per share. He sold 2 years later on November 1, 2010, with the shares trading at £2.65 per share. On a buy and hold basis, this represented a return of 143%, but the investor's trimming meant that his average sell price was £1.88 per share. Thus, when he eventually sold out completely, he had made a profit of 79%. Data point: dealing with losses. Remember, despite their successful approach, only 1 in 3 of the connoisseur's ideas made money. In other words, every connoisseur was also an assassin or a hunter when it came to losses. Clues from the Forbes Rich list. Having discovered that one half of the secret to making money, even if we are wrong most of the time, is to write your winners in size, I now look at the Forbes Rich list in a new light. Previously, I would look at it and think, why didn't I think of that? Or, he must be a genius. For example, at the time of writing, Jeff Bezos, at a relatively youthful age of 49, is ranked as the 18th richest person on the planet, with a net worth of $25 billion. That makes him richer than the entire economies of Paraguay and Jamaica. How did Jeff become so fabulously wealthy? The popular story told by mainstream media is that he became rich because he founded Amazon, which has grown from being a humble online book store to the world's largest online retailer. The story which is overlooked and never discussed is the fact that he really became super rich because he had a large stake in Amazon and he never sold out. The importance of this simple observation should not be underestimated. Over the past decade or so, I would imagine Bezos has been approached by hundreds, possibly thousands of other companies wanting to buy Amazon from him. Could you have resisted if someone offered you $10 million or $100 million for your company? Resisting temptation and staying invested in a great idea is critical. Had Jeff sold out earlier when he was building Amazon, we may never have heard about him today. Let's take another example. Sarah Blakely, at the youthful age of 42, has just joined the ranks of the super rich with a net worth of over $1 billion. In fact, she is the youngest self-made female billionaire. What was the secret of her success? The official line spun by the media is that she is the creator and founder of Spanx, a clothing line that goes under your clothes to help keep the fat tucked away and give you a firmer shape. Some will also tell you she is the embodiment of the American dream, having gone from being a lowly paid employee at Disney World to super rich, because at the age of 29 she took her life savings of $5,000 and invested in herself. She designed, manufactured and sold her clothes from her Atlanta apartment, before opening her own shops in retail malls. Others will say to you she got rich thanks to Oprah Winfrey, because Spanx was named one of Oprah's favorite things. The one thing you do not hear is that she made a lot of money because she stayed invested in her great idea. Even today, at the time of writing, she owns 100% of her company. When you are winning, dedication and discipline is what you require. The Pareto principle, otherwise known as the 80-20 rule, states that 80% of the effects come from 20% of the causes. It helps explain why great investors can be wrong most of the time and still make money. A few big winners make a massive difference to the eventual outcome. Take any person on the Forbes rich list, and the common thread that binds them all is that they have large stakes in a company that they have continued to hold. Why many fund managers are doomed to fail. Unfortunately, many fund managers find it almost impossible to be connoisseurs. Firstly, many professional investors over-diversify when they invest because they are managing their career risk. Most are judged by their bosses and employers based on how they perform against an index or peer group over a short period of time. This militates against concentrating investments in potential long-term winners. Secondly, regulators, based on investment theories from the 1970s, have put into place rules that prohibit professional fund managers from holding large positions in just a handful of their very best money-making ideas. Why? Because they believe diversified portfolios represent less risk than a concentrated portfolio of stocks. The reality, however, is that all you are doing is swapping one type of risk for another. You are exchanging company-specific risk, idiosyncratic risk, which may be very low, depending on the type of company you invest in, for market risk, systematic risk. Risk hasn't been reduced, it has been transferred. Academic support for best ideas investing. There is strong academic evidence for why investing in just your highest conviction ideas makes sense. A paper by professors from Harvard University and the London School of Economics examined the performance of the stocks that represented investment managers' very best ideas. To ensure their findings were robust, they focused on all the U.S. registered domestic equity funds that filed their quarterly holdings with the Securities Exchange Commission (SEC) over a 14-year period beginning in January 1991 and ending in December 2005. This was a period that captured both the massive technology bubble of the late 1990s and the subsequent popping of that bubble and stock market crash from 2000 to 2002. Given the fact that it is a requirement for most funds to file their holdings with the SEC, their study captured the majority of funds in existence that people could invest in during that period. The only caveat was that the fund had to have net assets of at least $5 million and contain at least 20 stocks. Index funds were excluded for the obvious reason that they try to replicate the performance of an index, and the largest holdings cannot be said to represent an active manager's best ideas. Their findings were startling. They discovered the single highest conviction stock of every manager taken together outperformed the market, as well as the other stocks in those managers' portfolios, by approximately 1 to 14%. That is a staggering 4 to 16% a year. Over a 10-year time frame, that means these stocks could have outperformed the market by a phenomenal 48 to 341%. The manager's top 5 stocks also outperformed the market, as well as the other stocks in those managers' portfolios, significantly. The manager's worst ideas, those stocks with the lowest weighting, 55, performed significantly worse than the manager's best ideas. A cynical reviewing of these findings might quickly conclude that the results must be skewed by significant overlap between managers' best ideas, or that maybe there were times when a particular stock was hot and everyone bought it. However, that was not the case. In fact, the findings showed that more than 70% of best ideas did not overlap across managers, and only 8% of best ideas overlap over 3 managers at a time. This lends support to the notion that success is not determined by luckily investing in the hot stock at any one time. Rather, it is about investing in your best idea. The authors of the paper concluded by posing a simple question. What if each mutual fund manager had only to pick a few stocks, their best ideas? Could they outperform under those circumstances? We document strong evidence that they could, as the best ideas of active managers generate up to an order of magnitude more alpha than their portfolio as a whole. This research paper shows that professional investors do have skill in picking stocks, especially when it relates to their best ideas. It seems that over-diversification is another thing to blame for poor performance by professional investors. The poor overall performance of mutual fund managers in the past is not due to a lack of stock-picking ability, but rather to institutional factors that encourage them to over-diversify, i.e., pick more stocks than their best alpha-generating ideas. Phrased differently, the organization of the money management industry appears to make it optimal for managers to introduce stocks into their portfolios that are not outperformers. In other words, managers attempt to maximize profits by maximizing assets under management, while investors benefit from concentration. Managers under most commonly used fee structures are better off with a more diversified portfolio. Dangers of being a connoisseur. As the most profitable form of investing, being a connoisseur is not easy. Not only does it run against some pretty strong impulses, it also comes with some significant dangers that must be watched for. There are 3 in particular. 1. You can be too late. As we covered earlier, Ned Davis, using the Dow Jones Industrial Average Index from 1929 to 1998, showed that the bulk of investors' returns, more or less half, in bull markets come in the first third of a rally. 57. He also showed that the first half of a rally accounts for 2/3 of the overall return in a bull market. This is something to keep in mind if you are buying a winner. The easy money has arguably been made. The longer a rally has gone on, the greater the likelihood it is nearer to the end than the beginning. 2. Momentum can be illusory and end abruptly. The longer a stock has been winning, and the more widespread its story has become, the more speculators will have bought into it with the view to own it for as long as the trend is their friend. Some high-performance stocks should be thought of as viral stocks. The hidden force that drives speculative money to buy into a winner is the same as that which causes us to choose to dine in a restaurant that has a queue coming out of the door. Success has an allure, but not all success will last forever. Investors seem to be hardwired to follow the herd, so we need to be careful when writing a winning stock. Charles Mackay, in his 1841 book, Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds, examined 3 bubbles: the 18th century Mississippi Project, the South Sea Bubble, and the 17th century Dutch tulip mania. His research showed how people lose the ability to think rationally under pressures of crowd behavior. At the height of a bull market or in the depths of a bear market, people become herd-minded. And it is rarely safe to be relying on irrationality for profit for too long. I learned that even though markets look their very best when they are setting new highs, that is often the best time to sell. Eli Tullis, instilled in me the idea that, to some extent, to be a good trader, you have to be contrarian. Said by Paul Tudor Jones too. This suggests that sipping some of those profits over time makes a lot of sense. While you stay invested and therefore have the potential to win big, you are mitigating the potential damage should the shares disappoint. 3. You can get stuck. Ned Davis makes a brilliant point about the danger of crowded trades. If someone yells fire in a theater filled to the rafters with people, panic breaks out and people can be crushed rushing for the exits. However, if someone yells fire in a theater with very few people, the people can get up, look for signs of fire, and walk out in an orderly manner. This is another reason that the connoisseur's approach of taking some profit over the years is a good idea. It's like inching towards the fire exit. Sir Isaac Newton famously lost everything with his investment in the South Sea stock in the 1700s. The amazing thing, however, was that he was early into the trade and sold out completely, having made a nice profit. Then the stock kept going up, and Newton sought his friends who had remained invested become very rich. So he bought back in, this time with a larger stake. Sadly, it was not far from the top and the stock subsequently collapsed and he was left broke. This led him to say, "I can calculate the orbit of the heavenly bodies, but I cannot fathom the madness of men." Are you ready to be a connoisseur? It takes a lot of nerves and patience to be a connoisseur. It's something everyone should aspire to, but few find easy. Hopefully this chapter has inspired you to join their ranks. My research showed that the best investors all benefited from holding a few massive winners. Strip out these big winners and their returns would be distinctly average. The reason Steve Jobs became one of the richest men in the world is because he held on to his investment in his company. Could you have held on to shares in Apple from 1984 when they were $3 a share, to 2012 when they were $700? Would you have been able to take a few bites out of Apple, but not eat it all? I am not saying you need to be invested for 3 decades to become rich. But you do need a process that allows you to embrace big winners. As Stanley Druckenmiller once said, the way to build long-term returns is through preservation of capital and home runs. Many managers, once they're up 30 or 40%, will book their year. The way to attain truly superior long-term returns is to grind it out until you're up 30 or 40%, and then if you have the convictions, go for a 100% year. Conclusion: the habits of success. Having had the privilege of investing over $1 billion with the best investors in the world, and managing them on a daily basis for over 8 years, my preconceptions about successful investors have been shattered. I discovered that the success enjoyed by top investors is not due to possessing a special gift, nor from having a privileged upbringing, though some who worked for me did. Nor is it down to being born geniuses, though many were very smart. Instead, any success ultimately came down to just one thing: execution. This was the common thread that connected all of them. And the secrets of successful execution were really just a matter of habit. I've divided the investors into tribes or gangs, but the really interesting Thing is that almost none of the investors self-identified as any kind of investor when it came down to execution. It was all habit, just what they did. Each had learned the unseen art of executing ideas in a way that meant that, even if they were wrong most of the time, they would still make a lot of money. These habits meant they did not need to possess a gift that enabled them to buy or sell shares at the right time. They did not need clairvoyant forecasting abilities. The hidden habits meant they knew what to do when they found themselves in a losing situation, and likewise what to do when they found themselves in a winning situation. If they were losing, they knew they had to materially adapt, like a poker player being dealt a poor hand. A losing position was feedback from the market showing them that they were wrong to invest when they did. They knew that doing nothing, or a little, was futile. They had each independently developed a habit of significantly reducing or materially buying more shares when they were losing. When winning, to take an analogy from baseball, the successful investors knew they had to try to hit a home run, as opposed to stealing first base. This meant that they had developed the hidden habit of being resolved to stay invested in a winning position even when inside they were burning to take the profits they had made, and their inner voice was screaming, "Take the profit before you lose it." I realize that some readers might be disappointed that the winning habits I have uncovered are too simple, too basic, nothing new. No doubt some readers will feel I am oversimplifying things, and that to become a good executor of ideas is an art that takes decades to master. The truth is often disappointing when you discover it. Successful investors want you to think that success in investing is beyond the abilities of the average person. They want you to believe that returns are driven by managers and teams possessing special gifts. This is propaganda. Success in investing is open to anyone, whatever their level of education or background, whether old or young, experienced or inexperienced. You simply need to materially adapt when losing and remain faithful when winning. If you have the discipline to do that, you can succeed. I have no doubt that many professional investors reading this will neither change the way they invest nor adopt the winning habits I have revealed. They will consider them too simple or common. Most think they are just too smart and that they know best. They are overconfident in the same way. All drivers think they are better than average. It's their loss. In the spirit of the film Trading Places, I wager that I could teach these habits to a kid in secondary school and they would outperform most professional investors today. In fact, I am prepared to offer such a challenge to the CIO of any investment house. A dinner to remember. Some people may worry that adopting the habits of the successful investing tribes means losing their own identity, or looking to invest with ideas that aren't really theirs. The good news is that the investors within each group all had radically different opinions about almost everything. Their habits of execution overlapped, but the ideas that got them into an investment in the first place could not have been more different. I will always recall a particularly vivid illustration of this. In the summer of 2011, on the back of the success of my European Best Ideas Fund, I gathered some of my investors for a dinner hosted by my most high-profile investor, the legendary billionaire hedge fund manager, Crispin O.D. Many things stand out from that evening. But the most striking thing wasn't the fact that we'd managed to get so many top investors from across the world to sit down for dinner together, nor the setting of a fabulous dining room opening out onto a courtyard at the back of Crispin's offices, nor even that Crispin had done something straight out of a Hollywood film and arranged for his friend, the celebrated chef Michel Roux, to cook for us. The food was brought over from the Gavroche restaurant, about 10 meters across the road from where we sat. And it was accompanied by wines of a caliber I had never seen before, and probably never shall see again. The most striking thing was the arguments. Around the table sat a motley crew of connoisseurs, hunters, and assassins, all leading investors of the very highest caliber, and you would struggle to find so many contradictory views among so few people. There is nothing quite like seeing a couple of investment titans debating the merits of an investment, one of them telling the other that he is insane to even consider the merits of a stock. You might reasonably assume that one would be a winner and the other a loser. After all, the market is a zero-sum game. Not so. All were successful, despite having different and conflicting views about what to invest in. Because they all shared the same habits. They had all mastered the art of executing their ideas. While many factors cause stock prices to rise and fall, the ultimate determinant of whether you will make or lose money is your actions. Lots of people know what to do, but few people actually do what they know. Knowing is not enough. You must take action. Said by Tony Robbins. The future depends on what you do today. Said by Gandhi. The winner's checklist, the 5 winning habits of investment titans. 1. Best ideas only. Invest in just a handful of your very best ideas. My findings show that having one or two big winners is essential for success. The 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, is true. Why not buy more of your best idea rather than your 60th idea? Said by Bruce Berkowitz. Put all your eggs in one basket and then watch that basket. Said by Mark Twain. However, I advise against investing in just one great idea because, quite simply, bad luck happens. Moreover, my research shows that your chances of success are less than 50%. With such odds, going all in makes no sense. 2. Position size matters. Invest a large amount of money in each idea, but not so much that one decision determines your fate. Act like a successful gunslinger, not an arrogant gunslinger. The arrogant gunslinger decides to load only one bullet into the chamber of his gun because he is so confident in his ability that he believes he will not need the other 5 bullets. As he stares down from heaven at his blood-soaked corpse 10 minutes later, he realizes that the reason successful gunslingers survive to become legends is because they always have fully loaded chambers. They know that, every now and then, they need more than one bullet. I often refer to the process of adding money to a losing position as firing another bullet. Not having all your capital tied up in one idea means you get multiple opportunities to achieve success. However, do not invest in too many ideas and over-diversify. Rather, be prepared to invest big, just don't go all in on day one. 3. Be greedy when winning. Run your winners. You need to embrace the possibility of winning big. Embrace the right tail, the statistical long shots of the distribution curve. Stop trying to make a quick 10 or 20%. Give your investments the possibility of growing into 10-baggers. 4. Materially adapt when you are losing. Either add meaningfully to an existing investment or sell out. Both give you the possibility of changing the ultimate outcome. You can turn a loser into a winner. Expect to find yourself in a losing situation, have a plan to materially adapt, and stick to it. Any general in the army knows that no plan survives contact with the enemy. Helmuth Karl Bernhard Graf von Moltke. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Said by Mike Tyson. 5. Only invest in liquid stocks. Make sure any publicly listed investment is liquid enough to enable you to execute your idea. There is nothing worse than knowing what to do, wanting to do it, but being unable to do it. The loser's checklist, the 5 losing habits of most investors. 1. Invest in lots of ideas. Many professional fund managers invest in low conviction, low expected Return ideas when they seek diversification in their portfolios to reduce risk. As a result of over-diversification, their returns get watered down. Diversification covers up ignorance. Active managers have not done enough research into any of their companies. If managers have 200 positions, do you think they know what is going on at any one of these companies at this moment? Bill Ackman, Pershing Square. The average mutual fund that holds 150 names goes that far out on the spectrum more for business reasons than for performance reasons. This is a profession where managers focus a lot on the question, what mistake would it take to get me fired? The answer usually centers on underperformance by a certain amount, so they develop a strategy to minimize the probability of that outcome. Bill Nygren, Oakmark Funds. Why diversification, which necessarily includes investment in mediocre businesses, only guarantees ordinary results. Charlie Munger, Berkshire Hathaway. 2. Invest a small amount in each idea. If you are wrong most of the time, then you not only need your winners to win big, but you also need to have enough capital invested in those ideas to ensure they have a material impact on your overall outcome. 3. Take small profits. Many small profits are the ultimate sign of a losing investment strategy, because you are effectively picking up pennies in front of an oncoming train. 4. Stay in an investment idea and refuse to adapt when losing. 5. Do not consider liquidity. Adopt the 5 winning habits and avoid the 5 losing ones, and you'll be well on your way to the kind of stock market execution that can build genuine long-term wealth. Good luck. Lee Freeman-shor. Thanks for listening this book. Our listeners mean everything to us. Please like, share and subscribe this channel to get more book